Well, you cannot begin to read very far in our Book of Concord, the Lutheran Confessions, before you realize they, the reformers were very grateful for the witness of the fathers, and they knew them intimately. They cited them frequently, and they never cite the fathers to clinch a doctrine that's not in Scripture. Scripture alone can clinch a doctrine, but they do cite them to show that their understanding of the Scriptures is not something novel, not something that Luther dreamed up, while he was trying to go. That's always the picture that they have of this. It's like, no. Lutherans were at pains to demonstrate, hey, what we're holding is the same old Catholic and apostolic faith which the church has always held. And so that means when we read the fathers, number one, we don't burden them with infallibility. There's going to be stuff in the fathers that they get wrong. And we know that. My goodness, I always like to point to Luther and say, are there a few things in Luther that he got wrong? Maybe just a few. Same for all of us. The fathers are not the inspired and inerrant scriptures. So we need to remember, well, as St. Augustine said, let me quote him, we must not allow even Catholic bishops, if at any time perchance they are in error, to hold any opinion contrary to the canonical scriptures of God. Or maybe even his famous words to St. Jerome. He wrote a letter. Jerome was a little prickly. Augustine had disagreed with him, and Jerome didn't like that. And Jerome or Augustine writes back to Jerome. He's like, look, only those books of scripture, which are called canonical, have I learned to hold in such honor as to believe their authors have not erred in any way in writing them. But other authors I so read as not to deem everything in their works to be true merely on account of their having thought and written it, whatever may be their holiness and learning. And St. Augustine's just not a lonely voice in that. If you listen to St. John Chrysostom, listen to these words and think about the interconfessional gymnastics that go on among Christians. Okay, listen. This is, by the way, from his sermon, homily 33 on the book of Acts. He writes, there comes a heathen and says, I wish to become a Christian, but I know not whom to join. There's much fighting and faction among you, much confusion. Whose doctrine am I to choose? How shall we answer him? Each of you, says he, asserts, I speak the truth. No doubt, this is in our favor. For if we told you to be persuaded by arguments, you might well be perplexed. But if we bid you believe the scriptures, and these are simple and true, the decision is easy for you. If any agree with the scripture, he's the Christian. If any fight against them, he's far from this rule. So this is how the fathers teach you to read the fathers. They're like, hey, it has to agree with the scripture.